Welcome to the Predictive Playbook. I'm your host, John Ryan. I can be found at John Ryan Sports, the number one on Twitter. I am very pleased to tell you today that we have a special guest in the house. It's David Bearman of ESPN, who is the deputy editor of sports betting at ESPN. He's also worked for the Marlins in all the levels of baseball, including their World Series championship runs in 97 and '03. He's a huge Dolphins fan since birth. The season tickets have been in the family for 50 years, if you can believe that. He's a Gators fan and alum, and most importantly, he's a proud father of two that he admits are smarter than he is. So welcome today, David, and how's it going today?
Hey, thanks for having me. Busy, just transitioning to a new house. So unpacking a lot of boxes, taking some time to get everything organized, and thank you for the nice introduction. It's always good to flaunt my Dolphins fandom and Gator fandom. Hope everybody agrees with that. Sometimes people don't like that, but Dolphins, Gators, and like you said, the Marlins organization for better part of 10 years. So I was there when that started and was there when they won the two World Series titles. So all things South Florida, and then the Florida Gators, of course, proud alum of them.
Yeah, that's awesome. Hey, I'm curious. My first question, David, would be to tell us a little bit about your story and the path that you took that ended up with this tremendous position you're in now at ESPN.
Sure, I'd be happy to share. As you mentioned, I had worked in the Marlins organization for a better part of 10 years in their broadcasting and PR departments, doing anything from play-by-play to personal relations, media relations, media guides, interviews, etc. And one of those led to a connection at ESPN that eventually led to me coming to Connecticut and being part of the production research department at ESPN in 2005. I was an entry-level researcher working on all of their live shows and then remote shows, basically as a statistician and encyclopedia for all of their on-air content, whether that was helping SportsCenter, Baseball Tonight, NFL Live, or going on the road and helping produce their golf content, working as the golf researcher for about 5 years doing at the time we had three different majors: Masters, US Open, and the British Open. So I would travel overseas and do the British. And then working in their college football area, as well as I mentioned, Baseball Tonight. Eventually worked my way up through the department as a manager and associate director overseeing content for the different various shows. And one of the areas that I helped produce content for and build up our allotment of databases and push sports betting content. We saw that there was going to be a light at the end of the tunnel with the PASPA ruling, hopefully, is what we were hoping at the time. So we bought up a bunch of databases and then, worked our way through them and continued to push content to all of the ESPN platforms. If you've been watching ESPN for many years, and just like any other platform or any other sports show, gambling information was taboo for a very, very long time. It was tongue in cheek. It was Brent Musburger saying, that play meant something for somebody, or the guys in the desert, or it was kind of just tongue in cheek, but we knew eventually it was going to be part of the fabric of sports sports content. So we worked hard to push that into the shows like SportsCenter and College Game Day. And Chris the Bear Felica has been a huge help in pushing that content out there. And now overturning PASPA 2.5 years ago has led to ESPN taking that leap forward, where we have a daily wager show, which I helped launch back in 2019, and now it's being produced out in Vegas, and we work with them every single day. And that eventually led to my current role of overseeing sports betting content and working with our ESPN. I oversee ESPN Chalk on a day-to-day basis and work with the great people like Doug Kazarian, Joe Fortenbaugh, Tyler Fulsham, Anita Marks, Chris the Bear Felica, Stanford Steve, and the cast of thousands that we have that write stuff for ESPN.com Chalk, as well as on Daily Wager and the social show Bet. So it's a lot of fun. We do good things. We're on the air 6 days a week, and we obviously have columns every single day that I oversee. And it's been a blessing and an honor to be able to produce sports betting content for ESPN.
That's a tremendous story, David. I mean, that's got to be fun to wake up every single day. I can't even imagine.
It's fun. It's definitely fun producing sports betting content as it's growing throughout the country, state by state. And obviously the really good news that came about yesterday, that the state of Connecticut has agreed with Mohegan Sun to have sports betting come fall. So we're all excited that we don't have to drive to Jersey or do things that we're not allowed to admit to. So it's going to be good that sports betting is coming to Connecticut.
Yeah, I'm glad too. I was going to ask you that question, and then I did see that it was going to happen sooner rather than later.
Yes.
And that's good because it's far overdue for sure for Connecticut. I must say on the Daily Wager, for those that are listening, I've been watching the show myself, and both Doug and Stanford Steve had 9-game winning streaks.
Yeah.
Steve broke the record for the show with 10. So there's another resource for anyone who's listening. It's not just listen to one guy and subscribe to their service or whatever the case may be. There's a ton of resources out there, and this is one of the best ones. So it's 6 o'clock Eastern Standard Time, the Daily Wager, ESPN, and you'll be glad you watched it. I promise you.
It's a fun show. It's 1 hour of nothing but sports betting information. And you mentioned that, Doug and Stanford Steve both had really, really good runs. And even beyond just their one best bet that they've been making every single show, they've been doing well overall. They're a wealth of information. Each one has their own specialty. Anita's great at golf. Doug really, really likes NBA and college basketball, but also does all of the sports. Doug kind of does them all. Stanford Steve, obviously huge in the college space, as well as Chris Felica, who will bring a little slice of soccer there. So we have a well-rounded group, and Joe Fortenbaugh does a lot of stuff with the basketball as well and football. So they know their stuff. They have contacts throughout the industry, and it's a really fun show to watch and help work with.
Yeah, it sure is. I like it especially because it's not just the lines and the totals. They'll do team totals. They'll do first halves, second halves. I mean, it's pretty cool. It's hard to talk about live in-game betting, which is, I guess, my forte because I used to be an institutional trader on Wall Street, and right. In-game betting is exactly the same. In NBA, you get a 10-point run, you sell against it, and it's a lot of fun. It doesn't always work, of course, but it's a lot of fun. So, anything else on the ESPN front?
Well, we're continuing to produce content every single day. And, out this morning on ESPN.com, we have our NBA best bets for tonight's game, as well as our golf best bets for the weekend that I'm part of in the column, as well as help produce it. So we got that stuff up now. We'll have UFC tomorrow and more NBA coming up for the All-Star weekend. And it's every single day is something new on there.
That's awesome. Yep. So speaking of golf, I'm kind of intrigued by this tournament that starts tomorrow. The Arnold Palmer Invitational at Bay Hill. And that course has always been, you really don't know what you're going to get year to year because of the weather. Last year, I believe it was last year, was the high winds.
Yep.
That made it very, very difficult. But this is one of those courses that you hear the name and right away you think driving accuracy.
Yeah.
Tee to green. Probably, in my opinion, at least the two most important metrics. But I'm more curious to, kind of tap into your brain and learn a few things from you because I know you're very good at it. So what is it that you look at to identify some of your your best bets?
Sure. And you had mentioned the course, and one of the things I look at a lot is how the course plays, the metrics that are important to the course, as well as a player's past history at the course and their current form overall. Now, obviously, you don't have to have all three boxes checked to be someone that you'll bet on. But it is something that, when you're breaking down a list of 120 to 150 golfers who are all going out for the same first place prize, or you're looking at top fives and top tens or matchups, you do want to see how they play the course in the past, how they've been playing recently, and what the course metrics are. And you just mentioned accuracy and tee to green. I'm really focusing on tee to green for sure, as well as proximity to the hole and putting, because this is a course, it's a typical Florida course with water on 9 of the 18 holes. Bunkers in the about 109, 110 bunkers littering the course. So you have to hit the green to score on this course. You can get away with spraying the drives every now and then if you're not in jail, but you have to hit the greens. A miss of a green is usually bunker, rough, really bad Florida rough, or water, and you don't get those strokes back. So proximity to the hole and how close you're getting there, putting within 10 feet, and the tee to green metric, which is basically from the tee to the green, how many strokes you're gaining on the field, are metrics that I've been looking at. And if you read my picks, and some of the ones we'll discuss are the ones that I look at specifically for that, because if you're not hitting these greens, and Bay Hill is, if you look at the past winners of Bay Hill, you're doing one of two things. You're either hitting the ball really, really well, hitting 15, 16 greens, and then you don't have to necessarily putt well at that point because you're on the green, or you're doing the opposite and you're scrambling and putting out of your mind because it's taking you a few shots to get there, and then you're making big 12, 14-foot putts. So one of those two is going to win this event. Me in particular, I like the guys who can get to the green, the shot makers. Colin Morikawa is not playing this week, but a type like him who can hit these greens. Matt Fitzpatrick is one name I'm going to discuss in a few minutes. Guys who are really good with iron play that can get the ball to the green and get in position to make those putts.
Oh, I like it. The names that come to mind. Now, one metric I'm going to give to you right now, and I'll see what you think of this. There's only been 2 Americans that have won this event, so it's kind of a feeder tournament for first-time European winners as well. Now
it is, and I was going to say a lot of the Europeans have a home base in Florida, and whether you're Ian Poulter, Matt Fitzpatrick, Rory McIlroy, those guys have home bases in Florida, so they're used to playing these type of courses. And the guys who live down there play the Florida courses a lot better than the courses out west on the West Coast. So it's another thing to do. And some of the names we'll discuss have a lot of experience playing in the state of Florida.
It is a totally different brand of golf in Florida. I've had the privilege of having family down there at Ponte Vedra, where the tour will go next week. And I've never played Bay Hill, but I have played Sawgrass Players Stadium course quite a few times. And I can tell you, mentally, even as a good golfer, good amateur golfer, under 10 handicap, it wears on you mentally. And I almost think sometimes Bay Hill is harder, although I've never played it. It just seems to be just taxing every single shot, with all the water holes, like you said. And I think it's 17.
Yeah, that's tough hole. And you mentioned the wind. If the wind is howling out there at Bay Hill, it actually winds up being one of the toughest courses on tour. Last year, it was the toughest course on tour because of the bad winds that led to Tyrrell Hatton having a winning score of -4, which you just don't see. And I know last week the players played at Concession out in Bradenton, Florida. Tough course because there was no bailout spot. And also, other than Bryson DeChambeau, nobody had played that course prior to that. So it was a tough track for them, but if the weather doesn't cooperate, which I believe it will, I think they're only expecting to have bad weather one of the 4 days. But the scores should be better than they were last year, but I can't emphasize enough. You got to be able to get it there. You got to get it on the green, and you got to stay out of trouble.
So who are those guys that can get it in the fairway and have the solid iron play?
Sure.
That you think are going to do well here? I mean, Tommy Fleetwood entered my mind while you were talking.
He
as
is
a
one
potential
of the guys,
candidate, but
Tommy Fleetwood is one of the guys that I have in the column at 35-1, as well as 2-1 to hit a top 20. It's very, very rare to get 35, 40-1 on a Tommy Fleetwood, but his current form hasn't been great, and I mentioned that as one of the things to look at. But I also look a little bit deeper than his current form. I think that his results at some of the courses he's played a lot overseas in Abu Dhabi and Dubai, he had one bad round in each tournament, which sunk his chances. So even though he was finishing late 20s and 30s, he also was playing well enough that if he hadn't had that one blow-up round, he would have been fine. Same thing last week at the Concession. Didn't contend because he had that one bad round on Friday. And then late in the round on Thursday, bad round on Friday, and didn't contend. But I do like Tommy Fleetwood. He plays very, very well in Florida. You had mentioned Bay Hill as a breeding ground. Only 2 Americans, one being Tiger Woods, have won this event since 2006. He's played well here before. A T3 2 years ago, a T10 4 years ago. Has 5 top 10s and 9 starts in the state of Florida. So he's used to playing the courses. He has a base there, and he's someone that will play well at Bay Hill and contend. And if you can get a 35-1 price on him, that's pretty good. Another name that I'm going to throw out there that's in the column was a very popular pick last week because of the way he plays in Florida, Sungjae Im. He's at 22-1 to win the event and plus 220 to get a top 10. He really, really plays in the courses well in Florida. 4 top 5s in 6 previous events in the Sunshine State. Last week over at the Concession, opening round 68 to put him near the top of the leaderboard, but faded to 28th when he struggled with the flat stick a little bit. I think people were a week off. Nobody has higher tee to green numbers, shots gained wise, over the last 3 years in courses in Florida than Sungjae Im has. So I expect him to be putting well. I expect really good iron play out of him, and I'd be surprised if he didn't finish up near the top of the leaderboard.
Yeah, and I think he finished, was it tie for 3rd in the last 2
Correct.
Bay Hill events?
Yeah, he's played each of the last 2 years, finishing T3 and 3rd, so he has very, very good there, as well as playing Florida in general, and this is the perfect type of course for him. And I mentioned Matt Fitzpatrick a few minutes ago at 25-1. It's only a matter of time before this 26-year-old wins on the PGA Tour. He's got 6 international wins, won a U.S. amateur title, and has 6 top 10s on the PGA Tour over the last 2 years. scores high in all the metrics that I feel are important on this course that I mentioned earlier. Shots gained, tee to green, proximity to the hole, and putting. He's done very, very well putting, and he's played extremely well in stacked fields, finishing T11, T5, and T17 in his last 3 events, all against really, really good fields at the Genesis, at the WGC, and over in Saudi Arabia. So he finished T9 last year at Bay Hill in the bad winds, and I think this is someone who 20th in shots gained, 23rd in shots gained total. He can play with the big boys. I think at some point this year he's going to win on tour, and I do like him this week.
Yeah, I would have to agree with the victory because it's 6 international victories and a U.S. amateur too. Yep. I forget what year that was, but it was on U.S. soil. So the kid knows how to win.
He does know how to win. He's young. He plays very, very well, and he's just someone who, week in and week out, I do a lot of different pools, and I love having him on my 3-man squad, my 6-man squad. I can't get Matt Fitzpatrick enough on my teams, but this is actually a week where, without Dustin Johnson in the tournament, without Colin Morikawa and a couple of the others like John Rahm, some of the star power is gone. Obviously, you got Rory McIlroy, who can win any given week and is one of the few who have won 3 times in the state of Florida over the last 6 years. Rory's the prohibitive favorite, but I think Matt Fitzpatrick can break through and get that signature PGA Tour win.
Yeah, I definitely agree. Speaking of McIlroy and daily fantasy golf, how would you be able to have McIlroy and combine the other ones that we've mentioned with maybe somebody that is really flying way under the radar that you think could be a top 20 bet?
Sure. If you're going to play Rory McIlroy in daily fantasy, obviously you're going to have to go cheap somewhere else because he's going to be the most expensive player. Some names that I think you should pay attention to towards the cheaper end would be a Luke List or a Neiman or even a Sam Burns, who will be a little bit more expensive because of what he did in LA 2 weeks ago. But Corey Connors, another that comes to mind, guys that hit the ball well, attack the greens well, and have a good time out there putting, especially on the Bermuda grass. Those are some of the guys that you can pair with Rory. If you don't want to spend that much money on Rory and you're looking for guys near the top to fill out, I haven't mentioned Victor Hovland yet. He's as hot as anybody on tour. All due respect to Morikawa, if Hovland doesn't screw up the 18th hole on Friday, it very well could have been him holding that trophy on Sunday, because from start to finish, he played as good as golf as anybody. If you look at his last 5 finishes have been a win in Mexico, T31, T2, T5, T2. So he's a guy who is cashing checks for people taking him in top 10s and top 20s and top 5s his last 3 events, and 4 of the last 5. Wouldn't be surprised if he's the one holding the trophy at the Arnold Palmer Invitational.
Yeah, and what are the betting odds for him to win it?
He's at plus 140 for a top 10, and he's just below the favorites. He's at 12-1 to win overall. You got Rory in the 9-10 range, and you have Bryson DeChambeau and Victor Hovland back at 12-1. So you're getting a little bit better of a price than going with the favorite like Rory. I worry that Hovland shouldn't be in the same category as DeChambeau, so you're not exactly getting great odds. But if you want somebody who's going to cash a top 10 at getting 140, 150 on your money, I think it's someone you should play not only in top 10s, but throw it onto your DFS team as well.
And speaking of Bryson, how do you think his game fits Bay Hill?
This is actually a really good course for Bryson, and I'd be surprised if he wasn't a very, very popular pool pick across the board, because there's holes that he can drive since he's the longest one out there. It fits his game well, but my concern is Bryson is a high-risk, high-reward type guy. He goes for it. There's a lot of water. There's a lot of traps. He's not known for being a good short game guy. He's the guy who goes out there, bombs it down the fairway, has 9 irons in instead of 4 irons in. If he does that and he hits the fairways and he stays out of trouble, he can run away with this just like he did a whole bunch of times last year. But as we saw, look at the Masters last year, got in a lot of trouble, got lost out there trying to drive out there and in the pine needles and some of the water holes. Not great short game, got him in a lot of trouble. And if you're playing Bay Hill and you don't avoid the traps and the water and the rough, it'll be a long event. And you got to look no further than last week. Bryson went out in 77 on Thursday, came back and shot a 64 on Friday. That's Bryson in a nutshell. One really bad round, one really good round. When he's on, there's almost no one better. And when he's off, he looks like me and you out there. So I'm hesitant to pay the low 12-1 price on him, but I can't knock anybody for saying The star power is not really there this week with some of the top guys out. Bryson can bomb it out there. If he stays out of trouble, he can win. There's no doubt about it. He's now a major winner. He's a big-time player. I just worry that there's too much trouble on this course. But with Bryson, if he avoids the trouble, he wins the event. But he hasn't been playing great other than a round here or there, and you're not winning Bay Hill with a 77 on your scorecard.
I was just kind of thinking, like, imagine the final round with Fitzpatrick and Bryson in the same group, in the last group.
Yeah, Bryson would outdrive him by about 50 yards a hole, but then Fitzpatrick will kill him around the greens. That would actually be a really good group because that means I have one of my live winners there. So,
yeah. One name that came to mind too. I don't know if you mentioned him, Sam Burns. Now, if my memory serves correct, he's one of the best putters on tour, especially in the state of Florida.
Yeah, he's one of the best putters on tour. And you mentioned the state of Florida, and I got this stat from the PGA Tour website that of all the players who have played in Florida in the last couple of years, Burns is averaging 1.31 strokes gained on the putting surface, better than everybody in the field. He's 29th in putting within 10 feet, and he's also 28th tee to green. So the metrics line up for Sam. He almost went wire to wire in LA a few weeks ago, and nobody putts better in Florida than Burns. So if he can stay out of trouble, I do like him. You're getting a nice 40-1 price as well as a plus 210 top 20. And I'm also taking him in matchups against guys like Billy Horschel, who played really well last week, but I think this course fits Sam Burns a little bit better.
Yeah, and the grain on the greens in Florida is what makes it really special that he's number one by that much of a gap. Believe me, if you haven't played golf in Florida, you can have one putt going one way that you need a sledgehammer, and then the other way you barely touch it.
Yep, it's all about the grain in the grass. That's what the Bermuda is much different than the Poyana. If the grain is going the wrong way and you don't read it correctly, you'll miss it by a mile. And Sam Burns is someone who seems to have figured it out. You look at guys like Tiger Woods, who unfortunately can't play this week, but like Tiger was known for playing very well in Florida because nobody's better on the greens than him.
That's a fact. Now, another name that's, to me, is looking very, very cheap, and one of the guys on your staff, I think, also echoed the same thing, is Matthew Naysmith, who's number one in greens and regulation, number 9 in approach shots, 17th tee to green, shoots extraordinarily well when it matters on moving day and Sundays. Doesn't seem to have like any kink in the armor right now either. But
no, his metrics line up well. You mentioned them all, and he's somebody who I would play in DFS and take a top 20 shot at because I don't think he's going to win the thing. But if you're number one on tour in greens and regulation, you go out there and let's say he hits 90% of the greens, he's going to be on the top of that leaderboard.
No doubt. Yeah, I think I'm going to take that bet. I think it's like plus 350 or plus 400, and also, I love playing the DraftKings contest. I mean, I'm sure you do too.
Absolutely.
And I think every name that we've mentioned, especially the Fleetwood, that has to be a very cheap opportunity to have him in your lineup. And then from there, you have to kind of mix and match. I'll probably give it the kiss of death to myself, but I would keep Rory off of it because he's so expensive, but he's also had 4 top 10s at Bay Hill. He'll probably end up with another top 10, and now that I said that, he'll probably win the tournament. But
it's
hard
you have to
optimize it.
Yeah, you have to optimize it, and I guess the way to go there depends on how you're setting your lineup. Maybe you go with star power with a couple of cheap guys, or maybe you do all about in the middle, and it obviously depends on what you're going for. If you're trying to win the $1 million, you got to have the Rorys in there. If you're just trying to hit a double up and cash your $10 or $25 double up, then I think getting guys like Fleetwood and Burns and Hovland at a little bit of a cheaper price could go a long way for you to win that.
And one last question before I let you go here, David. Speaking of cheap, how do you view Justin Rose right now as a potential fit for a team? It just seems like he's so cheap now, but he's also not playing well.
Yeah, he hasn't played well since the break from the coronavirus. I've actually had him in a couple of events where he's missed the cut, and it's like, this is Justin Rose. You know, he's a guy who contends at majors. He's a guy who contends at bigger events. He's also one of those Europeans who plays well in Florida. I can't fault anybody for taking a European who plays well there at the Bay Hill for a cheap price. I just would warn you that he has had struggles at times and over the last couple of months, and every single golfer goes through his own up and downs, and Justin right now is among the ones that are further down. But we were in the same spot with Jordan Spieth earlier this year before Jordan turned it around, and I firmly believe Justin Rose will turn it around as well. And I love having him because he's one of the guys who I take often in my pools, and he usually does well at those majors.
Yeah, it's good to know. Well, David, I really appreciate you having you on the show today. I know you're tight for time because of your move and everything, but it's great to have you on, and I think our plan is to have you come on for some college hoops too, and that will be awesome because other than a guy that we both know, Kiev over at Odds Breakers, he's the only guy I know in the entire world that loves the Big Ten more than I do. So this will be fun, and if nothing else, we'll close the show here. And for David and myself. This is the Predictive Playbook for March the 3rd, 2021. Thanks for listening, and we'll be back at you tomorrow. And always remember, may all the wins be yours.